it's difficult to know quite where to begin. Beginnings are important. We come to them fresh and ready for what lies ahead. We have no experience, harbour no thoughts, hold no grievances, just the future to look forward to. My beginnings are clouded now, but like so many fortunate enough to be born in Britain just after World War II, I have a memory scrapbook of being loved and nurtured and cherished in a family who did their best to do the right thing. My big sister Anne was part of my life from its start. 7 years came between us, so she would always be my big sister. She would cope with bigger friends when I couldn't. She would grow up first and allow me to have the role of annoying teenage brother who didn't like having a wash. She'd get jobs, have broken relationships, and get married, whilst I was just beginning to explore the risky dangers of life that lay ahead. As a young adult to adult, I discovered her as a friend and had a taste of the unique relationship of brother and big sister. So I never thought I'd be making a film about my sister's suicide. In October 2013, she walked into this reservoir in the middle of the night and took her own life. For her, I guess, she successfully freed herself from the pains, the anxieties and fears of life that her mental health had made so bad for her last few years. But it's left the rest of us to pick up whatever pieces are left.
As you can see, we've got the rose at the bottom, the lantern and the blackbird. So all three together, slightly different meanings for the tattoo. The thing that ties it in most for me with Auntie Anne, again, all three. So for the lantern, we all knew Anne very well. She was always such a positive person, and she did always want the bright futures for us all. That's the reason behind the lantern for me. Roses for me represent beauty. We have beautiful memories of her, and she also had a dog called Beauty as well, which really ties in, which is fantastic. And finally is the blackbird. So for me, the blackbird represents us moving on to a better place.
Do you think she had thought about how it was going to hit us?
Maybe a little, but from my perspective, maybe not enough. Maybe she really didn't understand the implications for the rest of us.
Those of us left behind have to deal not only with our own grief, but now have to take on a suicide in the family. I can't bring Anne back to life. Instead, I'm already resorting to shots of me on a journey, off on a cliché which doesn't interest me, with a film title that your mother would not be proud of and would break the heart of mine. What is there to pass on to future generations of people we love, those whose lives we are nurturing even at this moment? Can I pass on some light after a journey that, whatever else, ended in darkness? I want to do everything I can to ensure that this is the last time that such a thing happens in our family. That's why I'm making this film. I like to look back to images of family who lived before I did, people I never met whose lives connected with mine, present now only in snapshots, sometimes concealing their life stories. In years to come, family members who aren't born yet will be told that Anne took her own life in the early 21st century. But they may also hear of her brother, a TV producer, who wanted to make a statement about her way of dying. So, off on my journey. Along the way, I'll meet with friends whose loved ones left them facing similar issues, and some family members who can share experiences and understanding. Anne had been diagnosed with anxiety, so my journey will take me to uncomfortable places learning about mental health. In the mind, unhelpful thoughts can sometimes overwhelm an individual, as they may have done with Anne. I recognise the secret internal world of the mind, where we think about things in a continual conversation. In that secrecy, we may hold many thoughts that can conflict with each other. Plenty of conflicting thoughts are presented to us everywhere. For everything that seems to be good, right and true, there's a flip side. White on black, good on bad, up on down. A healthy mind has to cope with this continual conflict and to make balanced decisions. It's good to feel free and unstressed inside our mind, and when fear or anxiety take hold, we need to understand something. I've created a sort of visual poem to explore the theme. It's a poem based simply on opposite or contrary words, and the pictures come from things all around that make up everyday life. Black, white, left, right, yes, no, day, night, yin, yang, up, down, stop, go, good, bad, major, minor, silence, bang. Boy, girl, big, little, younger, older, sister, brother, lass, lad, mum, dad, me, you, us, them. Enter, exit, 1, 2, happy, sad, harsh, mild, hard, easy, grown-up, child. Married, single, man, woman, husband, wife, poor, wealth, having, holding, sickness, health, nephew, niece, 2, 3, auntie, uncle, you, me, chorus. On, off, here, there, tick, tock, zig, zag, to, fro, head, heart, now, then, harsh, mild, grown-up, child, ping, pong, hard, easy, start, stop, weak, strong, short, long, do, don't. Part of my journey takes me to visit good friends, including Tim.
The first thing I heard was a phone call from Mum.
Tim lost his sister to suicide.
And she just said those words which have stayed in my mind ever since. I've got some bad news. And then she went on to say that Linda had died. And there's that awful feeling when you're gripped around the chest as you hear the news spill out that your sister's dead.
The father of my friend Charles took his own life when business had been failing, some years after his grandfather had also killed himself. When I first knew him, Charles worked in music management. I'm not surprised that he's used some of his guitar skills and his poetry to express some deeper feelings.
You just live with what's in there, and you don't, to a certain extent, you don't think about it, and you sort of distance yourself from it. You know what's happened, you've written about the pain. Doesn't lessen the impact of it. A family tradition. My father, and his before, knew when to put an animal down and practice what they preached on themselves, keeping the family tradition, good shots to the end.
We actually need more and more people to say, I will not let this happen because I will do this, that and the other.
You have this sort of dilemma between understanding what they're going through and then how do you pull them out of it and say it's not as bad as all that. Well, their world, it is as bad as all that.
And I think what we've got to try and do is to encourage people to have a greater self-awareness, a greater emotional intelligence, an ability to examine yourself when you're under pressure and reach out then for help.
The older I've got, the more empathy I feel. You've got to pull alongside those people, but you've got to try and do it in such a way that you're not going to help them push them over the cliff, but in your understanding, but how you try and draw them back. But you've got to get inside that situation to be genuine, to relate to them.
As ordinary life carries on, I think of what Charles said about getting inside situations of those with troubled minds, and his expressions through poetry and music. I go through our local car wash and wonder about my contribution. Perhaps I can combine my film with Charles's work and give a 2-minute taste of confusion and anger and trying to see some clarity whilst trying to get something clean.
My father, though a farmer, never dug the deep sounds of the soul or cross-fertilisation of ethnic rhythms into Western culture. Really deep was for carcasses in the earth, and depth only so much as seeds would germinate in the soil. Yet he blew his mind, a few yards only, but enough to separate mind from soul, and dribble down the grassy slope into the deep trough of the rain-filled ditch.
Sick, well, silence tells, sleep, awake, deny, admit, happy, sad, destroyed, made, secure, afraid, good, bad, sane, mad, hot, cold, young, old, love, dead, not alone, Perhaps pictures and sound can convey something of inner turmoil in the mind, but they in no way compensate for the catastrophe of a life taken away from us. I realise it's a struggle to make a film about my sister's suicide. If I had a choice, I'd rather make a film simply about enhancing life. Perhaps something that would be just pure entertainment. So here I am in London again, and I'm going to the Royal Society of Arts because today there's going to be a group of comedians there, and well, I really rather wish that I was making a film about comedy, working with them, helping people to laugh. So what I'm going to do is go into the session on comedy and religion, and I'm going to ask them a question. Here we are, the Royal Society of Arts. And I prefer to be making a film programme about comedy and comedians, but my subject at the moment is about suicide and faith. So my question is, am I doomed to failure, or is there anything funny that I can say about it?
I think you can. I'm only jumping in very quickly.
One comic has an interesting response, but my camera movement fails, so I don't capture it. I decide it's time to discuss the project with my friend Joe. Like me, he's a former BBC producer, so he knows something about filmmaking.
Only to a certain point, like any filmmaking you do, can you know what an audience will make of it. I mean, it's easy to think, oh, am I being a bit self-indulgent here? And I think, well, no. I think it's important to, be able to give some shape and try somehow to nail down something that you know is unnailable down.
Joe takes a real interest in mental health. He's acted as a voluntary visitor with Anxiety UK.
Can you think of any reason why I should make this film? Because halfway through making it, I'm not quite clear of my purpose in doing it.
I think it's important to be made anyway, because I think what comes out for me from it is how unknowable people are. How at the end of the day we cannot absolutely understand, sort of our nearest and dearest, and I think that's an important lesson to know about anybody.
So I'll move on to faith. I tried to keep the subject of faith out of this film for many months as I was making it. And I know that some people don't take faith as seriously as others do. But I can't get away from faith because I understand it's part of me. And it was important to Anne too. As a teenager, she'd influenced me, encouraging me to take faith seriously. It was billed then as the biggest thing in life. But on this journey, I can see some flip sides. Alpha, Omega, faith, doubt, silent shout, truth, lies, ancient, wise, chapter, verse, better, worse, hope, pray, night, day, lost way, right, wrong, reading, song, guilt, end, evil, pure, right, wrong. I was angry on the day that Anne took her life. At the formal identification of her body, I found myself speaking out loud to her, saying she'd done the wrong thing. Some weeks later, I was talking about this with my friend Abdul. He's a Muslim.
Often, before we bury a loved one or someone that we knew, we speak to them, and we realize that their soul is present. It's said that the soul is present with the body, observing, aware, alive, and hears the grief, the anger, the emotion of that moment.
My Christian faith has differences, but Abdul is a good friend, and we share a common humanity.
It's a universe, isn't it? I mean, when you think about the human mind, you think about the way in which we perceive the world, the brain and the mind and the heart is a universe.
And if that universe goes wrong,
can you imagine? It's just like the sun going around the earth, except the other way around. Everything would fall out of place. Gravity would be disrupted. The natural forces of the universe would be in a total state of flux and turned upside down. If we can. It's true. If we put it that way, then absolutely, it's cataclysmic. And I think our belief, certainly in the Islamic tradition, is that we are souls confined by body. That this stuff is actually confining something in us that is directly connected to God, that has been given to us as a gift. The soul, this life, the force, the spirit. And that's the thing that can perceive beyond words and beyond language.
I go along with the idea that life is more than the body, and I find that faith still has a part to play in my journey. But as I grow in understanding, I find it challenging to remember that Anne took her life whilst holding a Christian faith that she and I shared.
I hope that you see in my latter years a faith that will encourage you to feel that we have got that hope. None of us have seen it, we can't prove it, but to me it's there.
I don't want to agree with Nietzsche, but what sort of faith isn't there to sustain life when it's needed? I hope the conversation will now go on.
You couldn't compromise the darkness. That's when it sorts you out in terms of what do you fundamentally believe, how will you conduct yourself, and any number of things.
We actually need more and more people to say, I will not let this happen because I will do this, that and the other.
I know that searching for truth involves embracing a lot of doubt. But on this journey I still find that faith directs my mind to consider things which are good and hopeful and pointing to life. It's time to get some wisdom from the wider family. My second cousin Graham is a priest, and he's used his love of history to amass images and words of fathers and grandfathers and relatives going back in time.
Cello. Great grandfather.
A family tree takes up a whole wall.
This is your bit.
Graham understands something of mental health and told me that some had experienced issues over generations. This picture of 5 sisters matters to me because one of them is my grandmother. And she's grandmother to cousin Hilary, also a historian and collector. We met in the church, once attended by our grandfather, over 100 years ago.
I'm interested in, how families develop and so forth.
Do you know anything about the family's mental health history?
Well, now that's really very interesting because, of course, Granny, she was so pessimistic that, when she was going on holiday, she used to put a raincoat on and her wellies and a sou'wester and say, "This is how I'll be tomorrow." And that was a Granny Forrest. And we just used to call it a Granny Forrest, So any rather down.
So you knew Anne?
Of course.
Did you see any strains of that sort of anxiety in Anne?
And we had some long conversations on the phone in which she said, I'm going mad, I'm losing it. I think she thought she'd got Alzheimer's or something of that kind. And I said, everything you're describing to me sounds like symptoms of depression. And I have some experience of watching other people's depression. And I said, it sounds to me as if you're depressed. Have you talked to the doctor about it? No, she said, and it was news to her. She thought she was going mad, and I thought she was getting depression, which is not the same thing.
Because I know that one of the experiences you have in your life is working with Samaritans.
Yes, I used to represent the organisation dealing with older people, which is how I could recognise some symptoms, and I could say, well, and she went to the doctor and talked to the doctor about it, and he said, yes, I think that's exactly what it is. I think the important message to get over is what you said earlier, which is the effect that it has on other people. However you perceive your role, and you think you're a trial, you're a trouble, you're a drain on resources, whatever, it's the other people you should think about. But you don't, you see, because
no, you
it's
don't.
Very self.
You don't. But it's not so much that you'll be
self,
trouble to those people. You will be, but it's not so much that. It's because they love you. Because as a family,
yes,
both sides of the family, you're, if you like, I mean this in a general sense, your happy side, and my depressed side. We still love each other.
Absolutely.
And we're still family.
And we're still family.
And somehow that's a thing to hold on to.
And we stick by each other.
Absolutely.
That's the point.
Even through depression.
Even through depression.
Even though you're feeling suicidal.
Yeah.
We love each other.
And we would like you to talk about it to us.
1 in 4 people in the world will be affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. They're issues that have been known to our family. Understanding them is still moving and growing. This was once home to Uncle Stanley, a distant relative to me, but remembered by others in the family who paid visits to him when they were children.
Although it was a mental hospital, Royal Earlswood was, as its name suggests, pretty grand, with a big drive, and when you swept into the forecourt, there were often patients looking out of the windows. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. I'm walking up and down those steps.
And Uncle Stanley used to call them the boys, and they all wore blue polo neck jumpers. Do you remember
yes,
that?
I do. You're bringing back that memory to me. I'd forgotten.
Were they boys? They were all men.
No, they were men. Yes.
Mary has researched and written up Stanley's story in careful and sympathetic detail. She's called it a stifled life. The family all knew about Great Uncle Stanley, and it's clear that over the 20th century, attitudes and understanding of mental health certainly developed. Really,
well, he'd be caring the community today, I would imagine. Possibly living in a hostel or something.
And probably he would have been treated with drugs and get back to normality.
That's right.
I expect he would have had ups and downs, but...
That's the most interesting point.
But I do feel now modern medicine would have been used, and you do feel that the outcome would have been much different from as it was for him.
Great Uncle Stanley is one of those relatives whose memory is for me only in images and stories.
That is Stanley.
But I'm impressed by the legacy left in his father's will. It ensured that people like Mary and Kate would go on interacting with Stanley for the rest of his life.
There was money left in trust for him, and it was the interest of that money that was used to pay for these outings. That's why we were able to take him to nice restaurants.
I'm glad that my great-grandfather left a legacy for his son. It's given a reason to remember him even now. But I think about how vital it is to understand mental health needs in ourselves and those we love as we're still alive. Well, the journey's brought me here because in the building behind me they offer counselling for people who are bereaved. Counsellors don't give you answers, they don't tell you what to do, but the process of doing it is part of the argument for life. And the fact that there are people out there trained who want to help us progress is beautiful, actually. And I look at the building and think of the pain and the tragedy that's walked through those doors, and I'm so grateful that there have been people there who've been able to help me. Like so many people, I did need help. I'd started by feeling very angry, and it was 18 months until I was able to cry. That happened here, at St Martin in the Fields in London, at a special event for those affected by suicide. The first thing that struck me about being there this morning was the sense of reality by the end of it. The sobs. Time keeps going. Now I want to try and explain why it enabled me to cry. It gave me permission to cry for the first time in 18 months. Because there were people there today who were just trying to use everything they had to minister, to say something which would be helpful.
So Kevin was a friend of mine who took his life 3 years ago now.
How did you find the service today?
The service was wonderful. I thought it was just done exceptionally well. Kind of every emotion that you could kind of feel.
Did you feel 3 years ago my sister took her life 18 months ago, or less than, just like less than that? So for me it's still very close and raw. Is it the same for you?
Yes, there's not it's not a few hours that go by where I don't think about Kevin, really.
When it happened, it came, as I say, when we least expected it. Yeah.
And then you find, like today, you're in this awful club that you wouldn't want to belong to.
Absolutely.
And yet there is some comfort by being with other people.
There is. For about a year after I lost Alison, I felt very alone. And for me, it turned a little corner when I came to the London Support Day. I think it was probably the June 2007, so it was just within a year.
And there it was on offer in the context of everything that's horrible about Anne taking her life, my sister taking her life. I still can't believe I was at a suicide event thinking about my big sister. And I never thought I'd be on the journey of this film. I don't know what Anne would have made of it, but I have a strong feeling that she'd be a big supporter of something that began as part of it. When my daughter and Anne's niece Mandy asked if we could find some memorial project together, we came across tear bottles.
My dad actually saw the tear bottle exhibition when it was originally exhibited in Chichester Cathedral. And we together got in touch with the artist to see if she'd be interested in collaborating with us. She was. I knew of Grant Thornton's space and just thought it was an amazing opportunity to bring something like this to St Albans. So we're specifically raising money for Mind and Mid Hearts. This is about remembering her for me. It's also about making sure that something like that doesn't happen to another family in the future if we can do anything to prevent that.
The tear bottle idea goes back to biblical times and beyond. Working with the ceramic artist, we're helping to make it have further impact today. Deborah understood the connection immediately.
The times when I've had sort of severe anxiety, you feel a bit daft. It's really difficult to. For a start, you can't verbalise how you feel because you just can't. You're not in that place to be able to do it, and also everything closes down inside you, so you're not able to reach out because you don't know how people are going to respond to that hand asking for help. So you become more and more isolated.
But like I say, if it goes wrong, don't worry.
Yeah.
But maybe in that process of just a small process of maybe making a bottle or being part of a group, making a bottle with a group, in the making there is a sharing, not only an expression of yourself and you're considering it, but actually you're sharing that making process, and in that sharing hopefully you would feel supported and not so isolated in what you're feeling.
We came into Deborah's tear bottle project as a memorial to Anne. Its strength and future will be in raising the profile of good mental health and maybe offering some help. Other than that, I don't know how this journey will conclude. There's nothing convincingly satisfactory for me to say.
I think anybody who's been affected by this particular sense of loss will immediately tap into all those emotions that come up in it anyway. And I think that's absolutely important.
When someone is driven to the point at which they take their own life, it's not a merely rational act, but it's the result of all kinds of pain, hurt, brokenness, trauma, illness, disease. I mean, you had to face that hurt and that pain directly.
We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we're never promised a pain-free, easy life. That's not what having a free will and a free mind is all about.
And people don't know quite how to approach you. And so if you think that might be there eternally, yes, you don't. I ideally wouldn't want that.
No, we don't want that. I don't want that for my sister. We want it. This film, we don't want that stigma to be the truth. We want their love to be the truth, don't we? Oh, great. We're interrupted because life carries on.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah.
And I know that the journey will carry on, and that finding answers will take ongoing care. So much has been unsaid or unexplored. And I'm conscious of friends and family members also finding their way through a journey none of us wanted, missing Anne's involvement with future generations, a little more aware of anxiety and the paradox of conflicting thoughts in the mind. And I realise an end to my visual poem seems inevitable. Little big, leave, stay, journey ended, here, away. Do, don't, sleep, awake, live, die, never, may. Then, now, choose, lose, now, then, never, when, sleep, awake, come, go, light, dark, truth, lie, life, death, live, die. But this is my film and my poem, so at least the poem will have my ending. Come, go, morning, night, dark, light, holding breath, then, now, truth, lie, yes, no, come, go, live, die, live, die, live, die, live, die, live. This was the last time I visited Anne's cosy second-floor flat in Coventry. It fell to me as her brother to do the final clear-out of the home which she'd nurtured and where she's welcomed so many friends and family. Just 9 months earlier, the family had gathered to celebrate her life together.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Anne. Happy birthday to you.
For a birthday present, I'd given her a homemade video, so we could see and enjoy together some of her early years.
Yes, I hope we can. Oh, you want to actually?
Absolutely, yeah.
We want to have this cake. 5 hours.
Anne.
I think just before we have the desserts, because it might go on being a bit, you know, sort of not all sitting down. But I've tried a few times I'll get quite choked really, but to pray and to think of what I was going to say. And I don't think I can really say very much except thank you for coming, and I just hope that those of us that are newer members of the family will catch the love that we have in our family, even though we're at a distance.
I'd have preferred to have written a happier ending for this film, for Anne, its central character. She did that part of the script. But I know that her memory won't be defined by how she died, rather how she lived, for friends and family and faith and love.
We all knew Anne very well. She was always such a positive person, and she did always want the bright futures for us all. We have beautiful memories of her. And finally is the Blackbird. So for me, the Blackbird represents us moving on to a better place.
My sister's suicide was a tragedy, yes. But I'm still going to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that it doesn't happen again in our family. People have explained to me that there's nothing I can do about it. It's an individual decision that individuals in future will make for themselves. Well, I agree with that. It's their decision. It's your decision. But I'm telling you that this man does not want that to happen again in our family, and all of us will do everything we can to make sure that that's the case.